Hi, and good morning or good midday, everyone. Excited for the session where we're going to talk about writing meaningful articles that both rank on Google as well as convert your users and visitors into customers and clients and leads. And my name is Viola, and I'm your host for this session. I'm excited to have you all here. And if you can do me a big favor, please pop into the chat and let me know where you're from and what's your position. I'm curious to understand if we have content managers, marketing managers, or if we have content writers and content marketers in the house today. So let me know in the chat where you're from and what your position is. And as you do this, I'm going to be diving into my presentation. All right, you should be seeing my slides now. If anything is going wrong, again, the chat is where you can let me know. And then what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the art of writing meaningful articles that rank and convert. And my goal is that you can walk away with a 6-step formula that you can start applying this afternoon or tomorrow or whenever you're writing your next article. I am based in Berlin, Germany, and I run a digital marketing agency called Flow SEO, which is focused on SEO and content marketing. And I've spoken at many, many conferences before. I write for Search Engine Journal, and just super excited about bringing content marketing practices to SEO and integrating the two. Which basically makes me start here, which is a holistic model for creating content. And that model basically is the foundation for everything that we're going to be talking about. And so a good strategy for writing meaningful articles consists of 3 main components indicated by these 3 circles. And the first circle is your brand. And this means this is your vision, your values, your tone of voice. What do you stand for? And I do think this is becoming increasingly important. And we seem to naturally kind of grasp this when we think about social media, but we don't seem to grasp it as well when we talk about our blog and SEO and content marketing sometimes. But I really want you to think about what sets your company apart. What is your flavor, right? Are you funny? Are you serious? Are you scientific? Are you data-driven? Are you playful? Are you nice? And just really thinking what can give you an edge and what sets you apart. That's one component of creating meaningful articles. The other components is obviously your audience, whether you call them your target audience, your customer personas, but these are the people that are you looking to cater to, and they're the people that you write for. And it's very important that we keep in mind what are their desires and needs when we create content, and that's the second pillar. And then, the third pillar is the algorithm. And so this is, in my case, this is related to the Google algorithm and how do we rank on Google, because when we talk about long-form guides and articles and blog content, we usually think about Google. But of course, this is equally true if you're writing a Facebook post, right? There is a part of your strategy where you want to be catering to the algorithm. I think if you're only catering to the algorithm, you might get a little bit spammy or a little bit cheap or not that original. So we don't want to overestimate that. But for sure, we don't want to forget to cater to the algorithm of the platform that we're working on. And so if we can integrate brand, audience, and catering to the algorithm, this is usually when we see good success. And to kind of set the stage again for writing articles, in terms of Google and catering to Google, the reality is writing an article is not always the answer. I've been on a panel before where we talked about entities and SEO. And basically the point is that Google page 1 looks radically different today than it did look 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. Right now on the Google search result, we have images, we have videos, we have the knowledge panel, we have maps. And this just means that writing a meaningful article is not always going to help us to rank. If there's 5 videos on the top, it's going to be very hard for people to scroll by and even find your article, especially on mobile. And so there's a few query types where writing an article is actually not the answer. And so this is, for example, is a research query. This is when people look for conversion rates or time conversion, or they might be looking as like, who's the president of X country? These are the type of queries where Google immediately gives the answer on the search results. And writing an article is probably not going to give you that success for ranking, and surely not for converting that you're looking for. Sorry, that's the answer query. And then transactional keywords, obviously we see a lot of like product and category pages, and you probably don't want to slap a 2,000 word guide on your product page, because that would potentially hurt your conversion. If it's a local query like best restaurants in Berlin or vegan restaurant in Berlin, you probably want to push for the maps, because that's going to be the first thing that pops up. And then obviously if there's images or videos there, we want to consider like trying to rank for them. And if we think about very timely stuff, like things that are happening today, like, I don't know, Corona news or something like this, there's like newspapers and tweets and top stories on the top of the Google research results page. So in the end, an article is not the answer either. Actually, excuse me. So right in the beginning, yeah, I said answer queries is the usually 0-click searches like weather, currency conversion, time zones. And so the research stuff usually makes a great foundation for actually writing an article, because this is when you can also publish long form guides and definitions, and it can be a really, really good start. So before you even, open your Google Doc to start writing, I recommend open Google, type in the keyword or search query that you want to talk about, and don't overthink this. Don't think you have to get this right, because basically Google is going to rank your website for hundreds of keywords, but roughly type in the topic and then see how does page one look like. And then from there, see, does it make sense to write an article? And if it makes sense to write an article, then let's dive into the content writing formula. And this is the 6 steps process that you're going to walk away with after this session. So the content writing formula starts with keyword mapping. And this is becoming increasingly important because Google is not really ranking on a page-per-page, keyword-per-keyword basis anymore. It's ranking topics, it's ranking entities, it's ranking keyword clusters today. So we need to get that part right. The second step is gathering information. And then on the third step, we turn all the things that we've researched into structure that we then enrich. And then basically we end with on-page SEO and a very compelling call to action, because we don't want to forget that call to action, because it's an article that's going to rank and convert. So I have to give credit where credit is due. I've developed this process together with a guy called Shane Millar, as we created an SEO course together. So just want to give him a shout out here for developing this process with me. All right, step 1, keyword mapping. Keyword is probably the first thing that comes to mind when we're thinking about writing for SEO and for rankings. And what has changed is that in the past, Google was not very, very smart. In the past, Google did not understand that apple pie recipe for apple pie, recipe for apple pie recipe. It didn't even understand that these were related. And so you would create one page for apple pie recipe and one page for recipe for apple pies. And Google did not even understand this. Of course, today, Google is so much more smart, and it understands that these two are actually related. They're practically the same, and they're serving a similar search intent. And so this is what we want to be looking for. Instead of just saying like, okay, I pick one keyword, it's about a cluster of related terms that we're going to be finding a home on our website for. And practically speaking, this means that the pages that you're going to be creating with this methodology, they can have 400 keywords on page 1 and rank for 1,500 keywords. And we need to acknowledge for that in the process. And so I'll show you that. Quick note, another thing that you might have always heard from SEO is like choosing a low difficulty keyword. And the idea is that some terms are so competitive that you're going to be banging your head against a wall trying to rank for it. And so you want to choose a keyword that is relatively easy. And easily usually means easy for you. So if you're a brand new site and you don't have much content on and you're just getting started, if you'd use a tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush, you want to use the absolute easiest that possibly can be. So in Ahrefs, that means a difficulty of less than 10. If you are a more mature site, you have a lot of content already, you have a lot of backlinks already. A keyword is easy if it's typical for you. So if you look at your page 1 rankings and you say, what's the average keyword difficulty score for my page 1 rankings? You can use that as keyword difficulty. So for example, if all your keywords in the top 3 have a keyword difficulty of 20, then you're like, okay, if I'm choosing a new keyword, it can be as difficult as 20 and I'm still going to be able to rank for it. Okay, so you pick that keyword, you pick your low difficulty keyword, and now you want to do keyword mapping. And if you want to read my guide on this, I wrote a guide on this for Search Engine Journal, how to leverage keyword mapping for SEO success, that I just published in November last year. So if you want to have this in written format, have a look here. But basically the idea is if you use an SEO tool like Ahrefs, they have a functionality within Keyword Explorer, which is called traffic by pages. And here I've typed in 2 keywords. I've typed in time management and time management tips. And it gives me the search results for these 2 keywords. And as I can see, in the top 10 results, almost all of the pages cover both of the keywords, right? So the number 1 results covers time management and time management tips on the same page. And then here, they do not talk about time management tips, but all the others do. And so for me, this is a strong indicator that the keyword time management and time management tips satisfy the same search intent and that they should be targeted at the same page, right? So Google is smarter. They don't just understand synonyms and variations, apple pie recipe for apple pies. They don't just understand that. They also understand other contextually related keywords. And so if you can use a tool like Ahrefs Keyword Explorer and then go by pages by traffic, then you can see here whether or not you should be targeting 2 of your keywords on the same page. And in this case, you do want to be targeting them both at the same page. And the other example is here is I put time management tips and time management skills into the Keyword Explorer. And you can see here that this is a totally different page 1. And this is essentially what you're looking for is if page 1 starts to look radically different between 2 keywords, it tells us that these are 2 different topics, 2 different entities, and that they need 2 different pages to be ranking for. And so if you don't have an SEO tool, the easiest trick is to literally go type your keyword, go on page 1, look what page 1 looks like, and then make a decision based on how similar or not similar it is. So page 1 here is radically different from the page 1 that we saw before, which tells us that time management and time management tips could live on the same page, but time management skills deserves its own page. And I think that's also because the search intent is a little bit different, right? Like people looking for skills, that's maybe a more long-term vision. It has something to do with career development. Well, someone is looking for tips is maybe more looking for how to block notifications, like easy, fast stuff. And we can understand that. And so going through that process and deciding should those keywords live on 1 page or 2 is called keyword mapping, right? Is we're creating a website structure, a map of our keywords like that, and probably more precisely, after being on the panel today, we should probably say it's like entity mapping. Okay. If you have a keyword and you're wondering, what are some of the subheadlines or keywords that I could be targeting on the same page? Normally, if you type something, for example, here, type digital communication, the stuff that Google puts as the related searches on the bottom, you can usually target on the same page. So if you're writing the ultimate guide on digital communication, you should have a section saying what digital communication meaning or definition is actually to start off. And then you should basically talk about the different types that exist. What are the basics? What are some practical examples? And what are some skills that you need in order to do this? So typing your keyword into Google basically gives you already a keyword map for stuff that could be appearing on the same page. And this is probably where otherwise your marketing manager or your SEO consultant can help you with, is because this step 1 is a big strategic decision. And step 2 now, this goes more to the content team, which is like gathering information, and make that a very deliberate step to decouple structuring your article and gathering information. So gathering information is about finding sources, it's about reading up, it's about building a library of articles that you want to draw inspiration from and that you want to work on. And this can be a messy process. So at this point, we're not trying to apply structure, we're trying to get as much information as we can, and we save that in a Google Drive folder or in a Google Doc. And don't try to hold back or sort yourself yet. Right now, you're really trying to understand, what does it take to make the best article on that topic? What is the stuff that other people always talk about that I should be covering too? And then what is the stuff that other people barely ever mention and that could help me to be unique, maybe clean up with some industry truisms or urban myth, and that other people usually don't mention. So here you're really trying to get the bigger picture. Then step 3 is applying structure. And like I said, this is a clearly distinct process. So once you're kind of like done, you have all the information you need. It's like, I want you to understand that every article that you write is essentially a list. And what I mean by that is, even from a technical perspective, every article has one main headline, then a first subheadline, then subheadlines of that first subheadline, then a second subheadline, right? So every article, even if it's a storytelling article, even if it's a thought leadership article, is still a list. And this is important because Google is an algorithm and not a human, and Google likes structure in order to be able to understand concepts. But on the other hand, actually humans like structure too. And the more cleaner and deliberate you can be about your structure, the easier it's going to be for your readers to follow along. Now, very important, don't confuse this with me saying that every article should be a listicle. A listicle is this thing, is like 25 marketers say SEO is dead, 13 things to do in SEO, 27 secrets that you didn't know about techno music. That's a listicle. And I think it's usually a quite cheap way to write a long article. So what I'm saying is, like, every article is structured like a list, but I'm definitely not saying you should be writing a listicle for every query. And because what I want you to write is something that is engaging, and I'm going to give you some helpful tricks on how you can achieve that. But basically, it's important to think about your article like a pyramid. The term pyramid principle comes actually from newspapers or from executive summaries. And the idea is that the first headline of a newspaper needs to encapsulate the entire story. The first headline needs to be engaging, on point. And if someone reads anything, if someone reads only the first headline, they need to understand what is at the core of this piece. And what that means in Google terms is, like, your headline and your first introduction should satisfy the search intent. And this is very, very different from how many SEOs write content right now. And the classic example is that you're looking for a pad thai recipe, and you're finding an article, and first the author long and detailed talks about their journey to Thailand and how they met this cute Thai lady and she was making pad thai, etc. And anything that you just wanted to know is like, how many cloves of garlic do I need for this recipe? And so you're already frustrated and scrolling. And what I'm telling you is, like, put the answer on the top and make people happy, satisfy their intent. Because otherwise what's going to happen is they're going to bounce back to Google and they're going to click on the next search result, and that's not going to look good for you in the eyes of Google. Now, the question then you tell me is like, but if I give people what they'd want on the top, will they keep on reading? Will they keep on engaging? Which then basically tells me two things. It's like, A, maybe you've gone for a kind of like 0-click keyword that is like, what is the age of Britney Spears? And maybe you shouldn't have been writing an article about this to begin with, because, like I said, an article is not always the answer. And this is something that is like quick data retrieval that would have been better handled on the Google search results page directly. But if you did get a more elaborate, more detailed topic, then satisfy the intent first, and then give them a reason to click or give them a reason to stay. And I will show you how to do that with the content patterns on the next couple of slides. So yeah, start with the pyramid principle and satisfy search intent first before you go into in-depth information. And then bonus points for making your articles well-structured and good-looking is having your headline, having your introduction with that satisfies search intent. And by the way, if it's a complex answer, sometimes that literally means, hey, writing in the first paragraph, hey, this is a complex topic. We're going to start by discussing the pros and cons, and I'm going to tell you what to do in the end of the article. That is satisfying search intent, because now at least people know what to expect and they know where to search for what they're looking for. And so then the table of content is nice because it helps them to jump to that part of the article that's most interesting to them. Okay, so how do you give them a reason to click? Is essentially is you have your good punchy headline, 1, pyramid principle. You have your intro, that is satisfying search intent, also pyramid principle. And now you have your detailed information and everything that people want to know. And this is your content pattern. And again, this is a term that my partner at the SEO coach, Shane Miller, coined at his company, Thrive Themes. And content pattern essentially means not all articles are created equal, not all articles are listicle, but we have more options. And I'll introduce 4 of the options to you. And what I recommend is, before you even start writing, pick the content pattern, because that's going to help your writing and it's going to help you structure. So pattern number 1 is basically, we have headline 1, we have the intro. Now we go into what is it that we're talking about. This is where you have your definition, meaning, what is, etc., short, punchy. What is it that we're talking about? Then you go into, why does this matter? And so this is why, like, why is this relevant? Why? This is where you can cite like statistics on why something is important, or use cases or problems that are being solved by this thing. And then you go into the how or tutorial content. So this also makes a good example for product-led content, right? So I work with a lot of software companies. So that's often means like here in the how part, they can add their tutorials. And someone just asked me, is it possible to download these slides after the presentation? I'm happy to share them. I'll have my LinkedIn on the last slide. If you want, just add me on LinkedIn, Viola Eva, and I'll send you the slides, no problem. So yeah, so what, why, how, that's one option. The other option is this one, which is it's similar but different. And this is actually very good for more middle of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, let's say navigational or transactional queries, because this is where you're nudging people towards a sign up or sale, which is essentially you start your article by describing that person. Who's that target audience that you're writing for? What identifies them, where are they at? And then you go into their problems. What issues are they facing? And then a common scenario is you name the problem, then you basically make it worse. And you're like, oh my God, it's like, this is happening, but what if this keeps on going? What are you facing? And then you go into the solution. So this is a little bit more middle or bottom of funnel approach for a really nice article that drives people towards that next click and learning more. And in this case, you would probably do something like discover more or so to guide them towards your product pages or sales pages. A similar approach could be if you're talking about a topic, and then this might be an interesting one to kind of like uncover industry truisms or highlight a technique and whom is it for, is you basically you list all the pros of something, then all the cons, and then you define an action, right? And so this is a really nice form of an article as well. And the last one that I want to talk about is more like the thought leadership content, which is where you start by the facts, like this is how the market is growing, this is how things are changing, these are the tools that people are using, these are the struggles that people are having, and then you state your opinion about something. And like I said, the beauty of choosing your content pattern up front is that when you're facing a blank page and that cursor blinking, then all of a sudden you have something to start working off. And this just turns that writer's block into something more tangible. Like now you don't have to think about how to write 2,000 words. You're thinking about how do I write each section of the content pattern, knowing that it will turn into a cohesive story that makes sense afterwards. All right, step 4 is rich content, right? So far, when we've been talking about content, we've been talking about words and articles. And so now I want you to think about media elements on the page. So, and there's a few different ways. Within your article, I want you to use example and personal stories. Examples could be stories of your customers and clients and how do they use a product or how do they apply solutions. And then personal story is obviously something that you have experienced, right? So if I write articles about SEO, I might sometimes say like, look, I had a client in this industry and this happened afterwards. And this is what I learned from it. You have the opportunity to add quotes, which means that could be either quotes from people in your company or from other influencers or people in the space. And so this is an interesting one. Obviously, you can add images and videos. And don't feel like every video has to be your own video. If you don't have a video team, feel free to use videos of people that you trust and like, and embed the videos, because there's something to be said about curating content and finding good information that also gives you an authority and trust. And then the last thing is, like, SEOs typically hate putting outgoing links into their articles, and that is fine. It's probably not always ideal, but the thing is, quoting and linking to industry influencers is a great opportunity for you to build connections with other people in this space. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do this. And then what I would do is I would reach out to them and tell them that you've added them to your article. And this is an opportunity not to ask for backlinks, but to expand your network and build that relationship and meet more people. And as a rule of thumb, out of this list of rich content elements, I recommend you to add 2 or 3 per article. So either, like 1 image and 2 videos, or 1 video and 2 personal stories, etc. Make sure that you add 2 or 3 per article. Then step 5 of the article that ranks and converts is obviously on-page SEO. And so this is why step 1, the keyword mapping, is so important, because you're doing a lot of strategy there. And now you just want to fine tune it. I'm not one for the super, super detailed keyword optimization that totally overdoes it all the time. But at this point, I hope that you've written an insightful, well-researched, well-structured article that is interesting because it has rich elements. And now we basically want to fine tune it for Google as well. And the things that we can pay attention to is obviously keywords and internal links. So everything that falls into the topic of keyword is like check word count. So if everyone on page 1 has a 4,000 word guide and you have written 800 words, you're probably going to have a hard time ranking. So at this point, you want to check, am I roughly on par with what's currently on page 1? And this could mean, if page 1 has roughly 1,400 words and you have 1,200, me personally, I'm fine with that. But as I said, if you were like severely off, if everyone has twice or 3 times as much as content as you do, then you need to reconsider your strategy. The other thing is like keyword count. It's like placing keywords in relevant positions. So as Google is moving more towards keyword clusters and topics, you can start ranking for keywords that you haven't even written about, that don't even appear on the page. However, there's a couple of ranking factors that I would like you to commit to. And that is, firstly, adding your main keyword to the URL, to the headline 1, and to your page title. Like, these are 3 SEO best practices that you really don't want to miss. And then use your subheadlines to place in variations or the stuff that you found in the related searches. If you do want to get fancy, it's what I said here, entities, LSI, or contextual keywords. These are the keywords that would naturally come up in a conversation about the topic. So for example, if you write an article about kitchen design and interior design for kitchen, the word fridge or stove is not a keyword variation of interior design for kitchens, right? But it is something that would naturally appear in a conversation. And so this is what we call LSI or context. And there's some tools who can help you finding those keywords, which are Surf SEO, Page Optimizer Pro, probably in links from Dixon Jones that I was just on a panel with. And so at this point, you can go in and kind of like tweak your copy with these editors to make sure that you're mentioning these concepts as well. Then secondly, you want to add internal links. And the main thing here is that you want to be linking within your topic cluster, content library, category, or silo. Whatever language you use here is basically trying to say, if you have a website about food, you can break that down into pages about fruits, pages about vegetables, pages about meat. And so if you have an article about oranges, this should be linking to apples and bananas within the fruit part of the website. And so that is kind of like the trick at internal linking, is trying to be as strict as possible with yourself by linking to articles that are contextually related. And of course, you want to link to your call to action, which is a link to your product or sales pages or to your category page in e-commerce. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how a good-looking call to action looks like now. So step 6 of the content writing formula is writing a compelling call to action. And just that we're on the same page, I'm going to show you a few examples. So this is a call to action. So this is a tool called CoSchedule that I'm not affiliated with. I just think they do some nice articles that rank and convert. And so if you see, you go here, they have an article about how to plan your marketing campaign that actually gets results, including templates. And then you can see here, get your marketing campaign planning template, download now. So this is a really, really nice call to action. It's something that pops up when you're on the blog post. A call to action could also be a pop-up. So this is on the same article. If you're scrolling deeper or if you're attempting to leave, then they have a pop-up coming up and it's a similar story. And lastly, and this is also from their website, is you can actually have a call to action in text, right? Like if you want an easier way to all this data, the marketing calendar is the tool for you. And so the question is like, pretty much everyone is going to notice these two, right? Because they really pop, they're big, they're colorful, they stand out, and that they're really, really important, and I want you to use them. But please don't underestimate the power of native call to actions within text, because who is the one who's going to see this call to action? The person who just scrolls by is not going to find this. It doesn't pop enough. It doesn't stand out enough. But who's going to see this is the person actually reading your article. And these are the people that you actually want to convert and that are most invested in you. So please, adding call to action in text is actually really, really powerful. And now the question is what to actually put as a call to action. Like, what is the offer that you're putting forward? And so the question is, if this is the first and only time a user comes to your page and we can only get them to do one thing, what would it be? And the important thing is here is we can only get them to do one thing, get that 1 second click or that one further scroll, which also means we should not clutter our sidebar with offers. We should not have multiple offers on the same post. And we should be really, really clear on what do we want people to do from here, and then remove all the distraction, remove all the noise to clutter your sidebar and really focus on what you want them to do. And so the key to a good call to action is relevance. So for example, they had an article about marketing calendar templates, and they offer you a marketing calendar template, right? That is clearly very, very relevant. And so consider where people are at in the nurturing funnel. If they've been to their website for the first time, they're just beginning to learn marketing, they're just beginning to learn what marketing calendars are, they need other stuff than someone who has been to their website a few times, who's already used the free trial of their tool and who's now hanging out in the support forum trying to figure something out. So what is meaningful to someone who received 10 drip emails might not make sense for someone who sees the article for the first time. So think about, where is this a top of the funnel article, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel article, and what would make sense for a person in that awareness stage. And then offer a benefit which is unique and meaningful to that target audience, which also means it's maybe useless for someone else, right? So that marketing calendar, that's meaningful for content marketers, marketing managers, content writers. It's not meaningful for a salesperson or your bookkeeper, but it's not meant to be meaningful for your bookkeeper, right? It becomes a benefit because the content marketer needs it. It wouldn't be a benefit if the bookkeeper was interested in it. And then very important is the goal of the content, the call to action in your content is not to close the deal, right? The call to action is not a converter. It's not where you're making the sales. The idea is you want to catch attention and you want to attract as many clicks as possible to your landing page, your sales page, or your email sequence. And then the sales page or the email sequence have the job of converting the person. So at this point, you're just trying to get as many clicks as possible and moving as many people as possible from your articles to your sales or landing page. And then obviously you can use psychological triggers to catch attention. And so here I have 5 examples that advertise the same thing. They all advertise a 1-hour webinar on becoming a better business leader, but they all use a different psychological trigger. And so this is why it's so important to understand our target audience and what their needs are, because then we know what might be interesting for them. So for example, it's a kind of like too good to be true or greed trigger. If we say, okay, this masterclass is usually worth $600, but right now it's for free. And some people will find that really, really appealing, and that makes them want to click it and understand more. Another psychological trigger is what's often called scarcity or fear of missing out. Is when you make sure like this is going to end, and so you're like only 100 spots available worldwide, or only available until the 5th of May, etc. So there's what you're trying to do there is you're trying to get people not to postpone it, but take action now. Of course, you can use the psychological trigger for social belonging. Again, it's the same webinar that you're promoting here, but you're talking about join the absolute business elite. You can talk about joining a community of like-minded people, and whether you say join the absolute business elite, or whether you say join a community of empathetic, conscious entrepreneur, that's going to attract a very different audience. Then talk about the desired outcome and benefits, which is like go this webinar and learn how to increase your prices and command the fees that you deserve. Again, that's very, very different from saying, hey, come to this webinar to learn how to engage with your team in a meaningful way, grow productivity and team culture. And then obviously you can use a psychological trigger to inspire. What are their values, right? Like use flow to make the world a better place, or use elaborate HR techniques to make your team the happiest it has ever been. And so you can always use a psychological trigger to inspire clicks. And so so the psychological triggers are kind of like they're too good to be true, or they greed. It's their fear of missing out, or their scarcity. It's our need for social belonging. And then it's really picturing the desired outcome, or speaking to their values. And you can do this no matter where you do this, whether you do this in a pop-up or a banner or natively. This different language is always an option. And again, the goal of this language is to get people to click, and then the landing or sales page to convert. If you are overwhelmed by this, what almost always works is discover more, right? So if you're not having a good idea, discover more is your fallback call to action. So to summarize, the 6-step content marketing formula consists of mapping your keywords and figuring out which keywords should be targeted on the same page, which essentially means one topic, one keyword cluster, one page. Then gathering as much information as you can, figuring out what everyone else is talking about and also what they're not talking about. Then applying structure. Keep in mind that all of your articles are a list, but these lists look significantly better if you're using a content pattern. Then spice it up with examples, with stories, with videos and images to make it a piece that's really, really engaging. Like no one wants a wall of text. It's not going to work for you anymore. Then place your keywords and internal links to make sure your article is sexy for Google too. And then, really focus on conversion and spend some good time thinking about what is the compelling call to action, what is the psychological trigger that I could be using, and what is the offer that is relevant for where the people are at when they're reading my post. And so this is all I have for us today. Please pop some questions into the chat so we can talk about the things that we just learned, because there is a Q&A part at the end of the section. So I'm just looking into I just saw, okay, so we have the Q&A part here in the tool where you can answer in, or you answer, you can put your questions in the general Slack. And just to kind of like to reiterate is that if you do want to have the slides, the best thing you can do is just add me on LinkedIn and leave me a quick comment, because I often have all kinds of people sending me requests on LinkedIn, and then I don't really know where they're from or what are they doing. And so if you just tell me that you're from the digital marketing conference, I would really appreciate it. And then I'll send you the slide deck straight away so that you can look up the formula and also the content patterns again. All right. We have 103 people here. I'm curious, kind of like, what are your questions? And don't be shy. Nothing is a stupid questions, and I love talking about this. So feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'm happy to answer. All right. So Ruta asks, can we use a playful writing style on a blog article, though our company style is serious? Yeah, this is going to be one of those answers, which is essentially it depends. So I think, look, a company is not some anonymous blob. A company consists out of the people that work there. So if you are a very playful personality and this is how you write and this is how you do, I think your articles can be a little bit more playful than a general company tone. And that is because you're bringing your personality to the table. However, and people always say, like, but I work in the finance space or medical space, I can't be playful, I can't be funny. And I would disagree with this. But I do think roughly your article should match what the company is all about. And this is because you want to be congruent throughout the funnel, right? So if someone reads a very playful article first and then gets on a very serious sales call and then has very serious onboarding, they might feel a little bit of a disconnect and they might be irritated even if they can't quite pinpoint why. So I do think you should bring your personality to the table into your writing, but not so much that people get irritated when they're going through the actual sales process or getting the product. Okay, so that. Then Cornelia asked, is an FAQ section good for SEO? The short answer is yes. It's definitely good for SEO because it's an opportunity to answer related questions, thus use contextual keywords. However, if you're doing really, really good copy, maybe you can answer all the questions in the text without having to need an FAQ section. Sometimes the FAQ section is kind of like a cheap catch-all for stuff that you should have really answered in your content. So if you have within the content already a nice subheadline that answer, that's probably nicer. But otherwise, adding an FAQ section is nice, and then marking it up with FAQ schema is going to help as well. All right, marking these as answers. Yeah, how to play with writing styles. So I think this comes down also as like really your brand personality and how much that is defined, like how much you have, how clear the company is already on how they want you to write and what they want you to do. But a good practice is what I call steal a style. So what you can do is you can go on someone else's websites, or even better, pick some journalist pieces. So for example, the New Yorker has great articles, and then just look at them and see how did they write their intro? How did they do their headline? And try to replicate that for your topic. So maybe someone is writing a playful article about dog training, but you're writing, a tutorial for a social media management tool. But what can you learn from that article? So if you're stealing the style of that playful dog training article, what nouns do they use? What are the power words they're using? What are the jokes they're making? And this is an opportunity to get a little bit more range into your writing. And I really encourage you to look outside of the box and look into journalism for that exercise. Then I have a question, is like, how much programming goes into your job as an SEO manager, which is a very good question. I would say I'm more a content marketer SEO, which means that a lot of my work is related to content counters, content planning, content management, content updates and improvements. But as we know, content is only one of 3 pillars of SEO, and the other 2 pillars are links and technical SEO. So I'm a content SEO first, and then I'm a link SEO second, which is related to content distributions, getting mentions, etc. So in my team, I have 2 other guys who are designated a technical SEO. I think I'm a decent technical SEO, but I'm definitely not the best. And these are the guys that are better with like programming, working on the back end, working on the service, improving the scripts, improving the site architecture, etc. That's not inherently what I'm really good at. I'm really more focused on the content side of things. Yeah, and I think, this is a question is also obviously how we specialize ourselves. So then we have a question very quick. Is it better to ask users to sign up to the company's newsletter or go straight for a call to action that will lead them to a landing page for a sale? The answer is it depends. If it's a very top of the funnel query and it will take a long time to nurture them, then I would say newsletter. If they typed in, best social media management tool, then it's a link to the landing page. All right, our time is up. And I appreciate the 100 people that have been here with us this morning. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect, and we can keep the conversation going. And feel free to send me your articles that you've written with that formula. I'm always curious to see. All right, I'm pressing end session now, and thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.